Hello and welcome to the table, and let's dive right into the general things you need to know, such as if this is your first pre-release event, you get 6 packs of cards of the latest OP14 set. With those 6 packs of cards, you gotta build a 40 card deck with them, and anything that is not in your deck is considered your sideboard. So in between matches, if there's something you really wanted to play and it actually turned out to be something that you needed, you can take it, put it in your deck, take something that was not valuable out of your deck, and you're good to go. You need to bring 10 Dawn cards, you need to bring sleeves, you need to bring a mat. Those last two, I just kind of would say you need to bring. You don't have to technically, but I would just recommend it. And some other general tips that you need to know is that board control is super duper important. You gotta have a good balance of board control and pressuring your opponent's life, because you don't want your opponent's board to be more powerful than yours so that they can't overwhelm you and kill you. But you also want to put some pressure on their life, make sure that you kill them, eventually, or deal damage to them so you have the ability to kill them when you need to. That's super important and valuable. And in this set, like in, the last couple of sets, removal is not super big. So that's cool for the fact that, blockers, super duper good. It's really nice to protect your board, help protect your board and your very, very powerful threats. On top of that, make sure your life doesn't get too low. And, maybe get yourself out of a very dangerous and sticky situation if you get into one. So blockers being, a little bit stickier in this format, really cool. On top of that, your really big threats and your stuff that's super important, such as something that has an on attack or an activate main that you want to get value out of every single turn, is a lot more likely to stick, especially if it's like 9k, 10k power and your opponent's not going to be able to remove it in battle. Those kind of effects, great. You're going to get so much value out of them in this format, and you want to play as many of them as you can get. Obviously, if they all cost 9, you don't want to play like a whole deck's worth. But if you draw something that has a really sweet effect that you can get value out of on every single turn, you generally want to play it. Then getting into the actual cards you want to be running to play, 2k counters. You want to play pretty much every single 2k counter you get, but I would say you want to play about 10 minimum. I would say you want to play 10 at the least, maybe go up to 12 if you need to, but 10 I would say is generally a good number to shoot for. There's a decent amount of vanilla 2Ks in this set, less than there were in the last set. There's only Jewelry Bonnie, which is a 6/7 2K counter, Chaka and Pal, which is a 6/7 2K counter, the Macro Gain, which is a 5/6 2K counter, Match Vice, which is a 6/7 2K counter, and Mr. 9, which is a 5/6 2K counter. That's less than in the last set, yes, but they're commons now instead of uncommons, so they are more likely to be pulled, which is cool, which is nice. And again, you want to run about 10, so you should be able to get 10 of those at least. But if you can pull some other 2K counters that have some really nice effects, like Megalo, super sweet, can kill something, and it's a 2K counter, super valuable card. Bartolomeo can also be a chump blocker if you need. That's super cool. Kozuki Odin, if you play it as a threat, is actually pretty hard to get rid of and good, so that's super cool and nice. And Shakiyaku can also have a decent trigger, and, it can have a decent on-play too. And it's a 5k body, so that's nice. But besides the 2k counters, you also want to play a ton of threats. You want to threaten your opponent's life with vanilla type cards, anything that's got a vanilla stat line, like a Scratch Mana Poo, like a Diamante, a 6/8, vanilla. And ores, you don't want to play a ton of them because it's an 8/10, maybe 1, maybe 2, I don't know for sure. You want to have teeth in a sense, yes, but you don't want to have too much teeth. You don't want to have too high of a top end, because you want to have a good amount of stuff to play in the mid game. But speaking of which, there's also plenty of vanilla type cards. Bird Neptunian is a 5/7 body that does not counter, yes, but it has tons of absolutely amazing effects. Similarly to Bluegrass, which is a super cool card. Boa Hancock, which has a pretty nice trigger in some senses, and is just a good vanilla body. Kaido, same kind of deal. X-Drake, which is a super solid way to manage your opponent's board state. It's hard to get rid of. Tons of good things about this card. There's also Shanks, which can be a super great way to rest your opponent's board, or at least part of your board, so you can manage it. Then make all their stuff way smaller and way less threatening on their turn when they're attacking you, which is just absolutely insane. Yes, it's a 7/9 body, it's really big, and it's a rare, so you might not get it, but if you do, you definitely want to play it. Besides that, there's also Virgo, which can be hard to get rid of and can manage your opponent's board state, sure, at the cost of -ing Dawn, but it's still a super powerful and super solid card. There's also Miss Doublefinger. Technically, it's a 5/6, 1K counter body, but it's generally going to be a 7K. Might not always be, but still, it's a solid include and it's a common, so I would play it. Same thing with Ryuma. It's a 3/5. Sure, it doesn't counter, but you know, it has a good on KO. It can have a decent trigger sometimes, so I would play it. Same thing with Absalom, kind of similar-ish card. On KO isn't as good. And then besides that, there's the vanilla-ish kind of cards, the cards that aren't technically 7/9, 3/5, 6/8 bodies, but you know, they're still close enough, and they have some pretty sweet effects too. Such as King can be super hard to get rid of, and it can ramp you Dawn, so if you have a lot of ways that minus you Dawn, I mean, it can just basically always keep you at 10 Dawn, or keep you at a high amount of Dawn, so that's also always super, super awesome. Roanoa Zoro, absolutely absurd card. It's a 7/8 rusher that can manage your opponent's board state without having to put any Dawn on it or anything. It's absolutely absurd and broken and busted. Kinemon, not as good of a card as some of these other ones, but it's a 4/5 body that can restand 3 Dawn. You can put those Dawn on your, you know, actual leader, swing 8 at them maybe, and on KO it rests one of your opponent's cards. I don't know, that seems like a pretty solid card to me. Tashigi, it can get bigger, so it can turn into an 8K body on your turn, and then it stays as an 8K body on your opponent's turn, and it's hard to get rid of anyways because of its own effect. So I would say, generally speaking, you want to play this card because it's kind of going to be above that vanilla stat line, always generally speaking, and it's hard to get rid of, so just tons of good things about that. Monet, it can ramp you, which is super nice. You know, if you have a lot of more top-end cards, you have something like those, you know, ors, this can get you a little bit closer to that, and when it does die, it ramps you 2 more Dawn. Sure, rested, but whatever, and it draws and trashes you 1. Draws you 2 and trashes you 1. That's a super solid effect in my opinion. Corona, it's a 4/5, on play and on KO up to one of your opponent's characters with a cost of 6 or less, cannot attack until the beginning of their next event phase. It counters, it can have a decent trigger. These are a lot of good Thriller Bark Pirates type cards. A lot of the Thriller Bark Pirates have a trigger that allows you to play one with a cost of 4 or less when you're trash rested. Don't always expect that trigger to work, but there are a lot of good Thriller Bark Pirates cards, so you might be playing a decent amount of them to where you can get that trigger to go off sometimes, so just keep note of that. But on top of that, last card that I want to talk about, Silver's Rayleigh. It is a 6/6 body, so it's kind of the worst stat body I've talked about here, but it does counter for 1, so that can matter. It has a good trigger because it activates its on play. It's very broken on play of if your leader is multicolored and your opponent has 3 or less life, you get to KO one of your opponent's characters with 7K base power or less. You get removal. That's super important in this set, and I would generally just play that because removal is basically the only removal you're going to get, so I would play it. But then there's also blockers. You want to play pretty much every single blocker you get because blockers are really good. They're really hard to get rid of in this set because removal is light. You got Jinbei, which is a really big blocker that can play something. Its on KO isn't always going to go off, but it's a big blocker, so that's super nice. Charlotte Pointy's just a good chump blocker. Same thing with Bartolomeo. Eustace Captain Kidd is a 4/5 blocker that counters for 1, so that's a decent card. And then there's also Hannibal, 5/6, 1K counter blocker. That's a decent card. Buffalo's a cheap chump blocker. Mr. 4, you know, is a 4/5 blocker. Mr. 5 is a 5/6 blocker that's, you know, it's on play. Similarly to Mr. 4's on KO. It's not always going to go, but it can. And then Salome is a 3/5, 1K counter blocker. So it's a good chump blocker. In a sense, it doesn't cost 2, which sucks, but its trigger does allow you to play it, which I think is a reason to play it. On top of that, you also have Nami, which is a super rare, yes, but if you play it, or if you get it, you play it. It's a 4 cost 2K, 1K counter blocker, and I'll play rest 2 of your opponent's things with a cost of 8 or less, and sets 5 of your Dawn is active at the end of your turn. That's not as valuable, but if you're playing a lot of events, getting to the next portion of the deck, you know, there are some really solid events in this set. You got plenty of good counter events, like Time for the Counter Attack, which generally is always going to be a 1 cost 4K counter, which is insane. And its trigger can sometimes matter, so that's also kind of nice. You have Strive to Surpass Me, Roanoa Zoro, which is also pretty much always a 4K counter. It does force you to rest a card, yes, but it doesn't have to be a Dawn. It could be one of your characters. It could be like a really small chump blocker or something that's not going to be useful that turn. And its trigger can also be pretty nice, resting one of your opponent's big boys. That can be really cool. Besides that, you also got Bullet String, which I think is a super solid counter event. Generally, how I would play counter events is for every 1 cost, it's got a counter for 2. So if something costs 1, it's got a counter for at least 2. I would say 3. If something costs 2, it's got a counter for 4. Think of something like that. But Bullet Stream here does counter for 4. 2 of which for just that battle. 2 of which for the rest of the turn. You do have to minus the Dawn, yes, but that is a super broken and solid effect, and I would play as many of them as you get. You'll Frighten Me is also a super solid card, because if you have, 2 or less life, it just turns off one of your opponent's character's abilities to attack. That's super cool. And Trigger can also be nice sometimes. Then you got some good hybrid events like Flame Dragon Torch, which isn't leader locked or anything at all. You got a minus it on, yes, but it just can 1 cost minus or plus 4k power for a battle counter. And it's got a decent main effect sometimes, because if you're playing Rainbow Luffy, your leader is also Kaido, so that's super cool and nice. Then you also got For Fun, which can be nice. It can be one of the few ways in this set to KO something. It can KO a rested thing with 7k base power or less, or it can just counter for 3. Either way, I think it's a super solid card to play. I never bothered to remember the Faces of Trash. It's not as good as the last event that I just brought up, but it's the same thing, except its main effect can allow you to rest 2 of your cards, draw a card, then rest up to one of your opponent's characters with 7k base power or less. That's not as good, in my opinion. But, if you need to rest one of your opponent's big cards so you can manage it, so you can get rid of it, that can be super nice and valuable. And there's a lot of events that I've talked about, so I also want to bring up the fact that Coffin Boat is a super nice card in this set. Yes, there's that Nami, but, you're not going to realistically get it. That can restand a ton of Dawn. Coffin Boat, however, is only an uncommon that for 1 resource, if your leader is Mihawk, if you're playing Rainbow Luffy, it's Mihawk, allows you to just draw a card. So that's super cool. And at the end of your turn, if your leader is Mihawk, you restand one of your Dawn. So it's a lot more likely that you're going to have that 1 Dawn open to play one of these counter events. If you draw them, I would say you want to play generally like 4 or 5, maybe more, if you got really, really good counter events in your deck, or just events in general in your deck. Generally, going to be counter events. The only real event that's not a counter event that I would be wanting to play is Ice Time, a 5-cost main event that can trash a card from your hand, yes, but if your leader has the Navy type, again, Rainbow Luffy, that's why it's good, can take 2 of your opponent's characters with 10k power less and say, nope, they cannot attack until the end of your opponent's next end phase. And it has a decent trigger to bounce one of your opponent's characters with cost of 5 or less back to their hand. So that's pretty sweet too. Besides that though, you also got a couple of big boys. Basically, I just kind of want to talk about the super rares here for a second. Pretty much every super rare that you pull, like a Nami, if it's just got a really solid effect and it's gonna do a lot for you, think of cards like the Trafalgar Law, Perona, Boa Hancock. These are absolutely absurd super rares that just do so much. So when you pull them, you gotta play them because they're just that good. And if you do pull a secret rare, realistically you're not going to, but if you're fine playing that secret rare that you pull, like a Dracula Mihawk, like a Crocodile, it's a giant monster that's really hard to deal with, so I would play it too. Last couple of things I want to talk about. The reason that vanilla kind of statted cards are so good, I just want to mention super quick. If you're new, 3 5s. Anything that has 5k power or more, you play. You don't really play things that have less than 5k power because you have to put Dawn on them in order to threaten your opponent's life. And generally, every single Dawn matters, so you generally don't want to waste too much Dawn having to put it onto something that can't even swing for 5 at your opponent's board. However, the only card that I would say is an exception to this is Arlon. It's the only searcher in this set that I would actually play because, you can actually get a card realistically every single time off of it because it can get anything with the cost of 2 or more, so long as your leader has the Fishman Pirate type, which if your leader is Rainbow Luffy, it does. So yes, that's the only real card that I would say is, like, as far as searchers go, I would play because it actually can get something. And on top of that is the only thing that has less than 5k power that I would actually be willing to play. But that is this pre-release guide. I hope that you all enjoyed it. I hope you now all know what you need to do in order to win your pre-release event and get all the sweet promos and get all the sweet packs and all the sweet cards that you want. So with all that aside, see you all in the next video and leave a comment down below telling me how well you did in your pre-release for OP14.